My today's guest once said, "First time I've landed at Chopin Airport in Warsaw, I had this very odd, unexplainable feeling of coming home. Born in Brooklyn, son of the famous Polish writer who right now thinks about permanently moving to Poland. Matthew Tyrmand, welcome to the studio."
Oh, thank you for having me. I was born in Rockford, Illinois.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake in the first sentence.
No, it's okay. I grew up, though, in Brooklyn, essentially my whole life after my father died when I was 4, but I was born in probably the worst city in America, which is called Rockford, Illinois. So you can't choose where you're born.
If you had to compare it to Poland, which part of Poland would it be?
Well, in the book, I refer to it as American Katowice. But I said that before I'd ever been in Katowice, and I regret it because I'm doing business in Katowice, and I really like Katowice. The Silesian spirit is really strong, and I really like that. The Rockford spirit, not so strong.
What do you think about Poland?
Kocham Polska.
You became Polish, what, 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, it's now approaching my 5th year as a Polish citizen. Thankfully, I applied for citizenship before I became critical of the government because I assume now they would never let me become a citizen. I got the VIP treatment on my citizenship. It only took me about a year, so that's the VIP treatment.
You think because of your father?
Yeah, well, I had good relationship with the consul and the consulate in New York for a few years before they realized that I don't feel the same way they do about the world, and since then I've been banned from the New York consulate.
When is the first time when you actually became known to the audience in Poland? Was it when the plaque of your father was open and you gave a speech critical of government?
Well, the first time I started seeing any bit of Polish press mentioning me was in November 2013 after the proposal to nationalize the OFA pension pillar. That's when I really was motivated to start working with Govin, because he was the only one who is standing up saying this is thievery. And so I did a 2-minute prepared speech YouTube video on Marszałkowska and Jerzy with the Pałac Kultury in the background, where I said this is an act of Bolshevism. And that did not go over very well with the establishment class.
But Matt, we're jumping right into the politics. Hold on, let me talk
a
little bit about you, a little bit about your father. Do you remember your father?
I do. I remember him yelling at me.
Oh wow!
Yeah. So he would look.
You were an Audi boy.
I was, we'll say, precocious. I was ambitious, even at the age of 3 or 4, I think. He was a serious guy, and he had my sister and I when he was 61. So at 63, 64. Being a serious intellect, having been through everything that he had been through, he did not tolerate pettiness. So he was not the kind of father who was rolling around with his kids on the floor. And so I remember one of my most distinct memories was getting yelled at when the evening news would come on. Because keep in mind, this is 1983, 1984. There's no internet. Newspapers come a day after the news happens. So this was the most important part of the day for him, was to see the world news tonight. There was no room for distraction in the house at 6 p.m. every night. And I remember getting chastised, and my sister as well.
It took you some time to rediscover your father by reading his books.
Yeah.
How old were you?
Well, I started in junior high school, so 6th, 7th grade. I started reading more about him, his English stuff, his later stuff, the political stuff. And the first book I ever read was Notebooks of a Dilettante, which is.
And what's the feeling when the son is reading the book of his father?
I felt a connection to it. I felt certainly pride. I was always a reader growing up. I read Orwell when I was in 5th grade, and that's really when I started getting connected to the idea of totalitarianism in literature, the dystopia-utopia theme. That's when I really started thinking about these questions of what is a moral society, what is the role of government, and then I started really probing my mother about my father's history. So 4th or 5th grade, I was somewhat getting more cognizant of the world around me, and then I was really asking questions. What was his life like? And that's when I started to engage him, his literature, his life, his ideas more deeply.
So who is Matthew Tyrmand today? I know you a little bit, you went into the steps of your father. This is your book.
Yep.
Which I started to read, and I promise I'm going to finish soon. It's just
my
time frame.
only take you about an
but
hour.
It's very interesting when you start. When you start reading, it's very interesting.
I appreciate that.
Who are you besides the writer right now?
I mean, that's obviously not an easy question for anybody to answer. Certainly the son of my father. Reading his diary, I learned that we communicate with ourself in our inner monologue very similarly, the way we think about the world, the way we think about relationships with people. who I am. I'm a product of both the genetics and him, and I'm a product of growing up without a father in Brooklyn and then going to school in University of Chicago and studying all sorts of disciplines, including economics, and going to Wall Street and competing in that world. Essentially, if I had to kind of hash myself down to a couple words, I would say "Dai mi spokoj," which is what he stood for.
I'll help
as
you.
well.
Are you Wall Street investor?
I am an investor, but I stay as far away from Wall Street as I can. I have adopted a paradigm of what Wall Street is from my own experience. It's an old saying that's a joke on Wall Street. Wall Street takes your money and their experience and makes it their money and your experience.
Are you a political commentator?
I have a lot of views and I'm not shy. I commentate. If anybody asks me, I'm going to give them an honest answer. I did not try and become a political commentator in Poland, but apparently because of the last name, people had some interest, and then I opened my mouth and some people
and
liked
you can't
what
close it.
I can't close it. It's and he was the same way. My mother used to joke that when they would go to parties when they were living in New York in the 70s, and it was a cocktail circuit kind of mixer, and he'd go in. If anybody wanted to talk about sports or the weather, he would leave that conversation immediately. He wanted to talk about politics, ideas, literature, history, and things that there was room for debate and dissent. That's what drove him, and I certainly inherited that from him.
I answered the question for you. Even that you're not certain, I know you're a political commentator.
I certainly am.
You are.
Well, I am. I'm a commentator on anything that anybody asks. And right now that I've engaged Poland and people are interested, and I've said things that I think a lot of Poles cannot say, as evidenced by the last week of my life with some of the major media
I will
attacks.
get into that. We'll get into that.
Well, I comment, and you know, if people ask me a question, I tell them what I think, and if they like it, good. If they don't, to hell with them.
Are you activist? Open the books.
I am an activist. I'm an activist. I'm active to try and work toward a world where people can be left alone to raise their families and build businesses and not be under the oppression of ever-growing forces that control them, and whether that's government, society, media, culture, whatever force that is that would work to control a human being's individual decision-making, I fight against that, because I personally, like my father, just want to be able to say what I want to say, eat what I want to eat, dress the way I want to dress, think the way I want to think. And unfortunately today, there are too many forces at play that want to stifle that and prevent that. So I've become an activist. I did not want to become an activist. I just wanted to be an investor, creating jobs, being challenged by the marketplace, but I've become a bit of an activist. I do co-run an organization in the US called Open the Books, openthebooks.com, that focuses on aggregating all government spending, putting it online so people can see how their tax dollars are being spent. And we are looking and working toward bringing that to Poland. I think it's very timely. I think right now you're seeing with the latest scandals that keep erupting of how the Polish government is spending taxpayer money. For instance, 19,000 zlotys for a proofread speech is 1,000 times the market rate for proofreading. That is absolutely a moral failing of this government.
So you see, we end up talking about the politics.
Politics is just, you know, life. Politics is life. It is how policy affects people's decision-making day to day, and that's why my father fought so vehemently to be engaged in it so deeply.
But it's interesting how people don't realize that politics and economy
They're very related. That's right. You know, my number one political philosophy is free markets, and people say that's economic philosophy, but it's political philosophy as well, because that determines how intrusive and interventionist a government will be, is based on their view on the economy, because the economy is just everyone getting together to bring goods and services to market. The economy is the science of choice.
You're a pure capitalist.
I'm a pure capitalist. I mean,
where is the, name me one capitalist country in the world.
There are none left, unfortunately. New Zealand is pretty close, but they have a very simple economy based on natural resources and sheep. So
we can easily say that in your line of view, the government is too big everywhere.
Too big everywhere.
It's starting to control too many aspects of free markets, of the market, and the people's life, right? So the shrinking of the government will be something that you will fight for.
That is always what I fight for. My father believed that the centralization of power was a threat to individual sovereignty, and he saw it from the Soviet lens. Now in the 21st century, you can see it from the Brussels EU lens. You take 27 countries and you try and rule them from one fiefdom. And there are 27 countries with 27 different cultures. And look at what happened in Greece. Greece should never have been in the EU for economic reasons that we don't have to go into right now. And now there's a major cultural breakdown, and the society, the fabric is coming apart because it was forced into something by its elites for the good of the elites, not for the good of the people. Centralization of power is scary. That's why America was so successful for so long. The Federalist Project. You have a centralizing force, and you try and minimize its impact, and then you've got 50 decentralized laboratories of government. And that's why for 150 years, America was the most competitive, the most innovative. But now with the growth of the federal government, you're seeing a reversal of trend. And we don't produce as much. We have certainly a smaller labor force because the government has crowded out productive innovation. And that's happening all over the world, and it's certainly something I'm trying to fight.
What do you say to people that see capitalist pigs making tons of money while the rest of the society is poor and is struggling on a daily basis? I have an idea that when the big corporations go to bed with the government,
that's right.
It's no free market.
It's not free market.
Can you talk about it?
We don't have a free market in America. In Europe, you have a crony market. And the cronies try and sell it. They try and sell the idea that it's somewhat of a free market and that the government needs to keep this free market in check. But this free market is not free. You do not have the ability to compete in a pure environment where the winners win and the losers lose because of the evolution of the corporate sector and the lobbying sector that has been able to purchase protection from the government. I call it the cartelification. A cartel is a group that purchases power to protect itself. OPEC is the greatest cartel that the world had seen, or the earliest big cartel, because it really had big power, 70s, 80s, setting oil prices. This is not free market. Right now you have big corporations, and in Open the Books we do big studies on seeing how much federal money from taxpayers flows into the Fortune 100, Fortune 500, and it's obscene. Not contracts. Contracts are fine. Now, you want to see competitively bid contracts. You want to see contracts where the taxpayer is being protected, not crony deals where the taxpayer gets abused and exploited for the benefit of the corporation. But what we're seeing is beyond the contracts, free money, farm subsidies going to Walmart, SBA loans going to Walmart, and the gas stations, and fast food joints. So what they do is they say, oh, we're a small business because our newest store, it's just one business. But that is cronyism. They've been able to write the laws to protect themselves. So when people say Poland and the US and Europe, the corporate fat cats like Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon and the banking sector globally, I agree with them. That's not capitalism. That's cronyism. If they were forced to compete on their own merits, most of those banks would be deemed insolvent, and they'd be gone. They would have been gone in 2008, 2009, 2010. Most of the global money center banks in the world are insolvent. They are still holding debt on their balance sheets that is absolutely worthless, but they can't recognize that because if they do, it will show that their balance sheets have way more worthless debt than there is commercial deposits to offset.
I'm going to try to put it into
layman's terms.
Smaller perspective of capitalism on the smaller level. What I think it is, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that certain people can obtain under the table or because they're friends certain licenses. Where the other people can do whatever they want. They can never get that license.
Yeah.
Is that what it's all about?
That's one of the great hallmarks of a crony capital, the evolution of a crony capitalist state. More licensing, and you see this everywhere. I've been a huge fan of an organization in the U.S. called Institute for Justice, based in Washington, D.C. It's a public interest law firm that fights things like eminent domain and civil forfeiture and licensing. If you are a hair braider, you should not need a license from the state to braid hair. There's no public good in saying, oh, you're protecting the public from unlicensed hair braiding. What that does is create a cartel again, a protected industry that will not see the competition that the free market would allow it to see if these licensing scams were in play. In Poland, there's a great example of what licensing does to an economy. Shale gas drilling. The Polish government said, we want the money now from multinationals who might invest in Poland. So they created elaborate licensing schemes on the front end and elaborate royalty schemes, payouts to be made on different milestones if things were to be successful. The companies like Marathon and BP and Eni, they said, you know what, we're going to spend billions and billions and billions of euros, zlotys, and dollars to try and find something that we don't know if it's there, and then the Polish government's going to try and take it all now from us. That's not a smart investment for us. The scary thing is that would have created tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs in Poland, not just in the exploration, but in the service industries that would have come up around the exploration. It's a travesty. And now when you look at the geopolitics of a strong energy Russia, it's even worse because you could have had an energy-independent Poland, but the politicians stole that opportunity.
Okay, since you're aspiring Polish commentator, let's move a little bit to Europe, to Poland.
Please.
What's wrong with the Polish government, which you criticize all the time?
Term limits, term limits, term limits, term limits. I say it everywhere, not just Poland, but EU, US. When politicians are somewhere, they want to stay there. The greatest incentive a politician has is not to do well for his constituents. It's not to create a vibrant economy or society. It is to remain in power for their own benefit. When you have politicians who can remain there in perpetuity, they have one goal: to remain there in perpetuity. I'm of the school of thought that politicians are like babies' diapers. You have to remove them regularly, otherwise the place really starts to stink.
What a beautiful comparison.
Yeah, it's true. And you know what? If it maybe 30 years ago this was a theoretical analogy, I don't think anybody in the world who's not a member of the governing class could really disagree with that statement.
Well, you made a couple of friends, a couple of foes lately in Poland among the politicians.
C'est la vie.
Yeah, some people say because you criticize the ruling party that you're a peace guy.
I'm certainly not a peace guy, nor a PO guy, nor a PSL guy, nor an SLD guy, nor a KNP guy. I am a daimi.
Look at the camera and say, I'm not a peace guy.
I'm not a peace guy. Though, I will acknowledge that I am, you know, everything, the perfect is the enemy of the good, and there are greater evils and lesser evils. And right now in Poland, the greatest governing evil I see is an entrenched political class developing, and that is PO. PO has proved in the better part of this last decade that they are concerned with entrenching their own power, not in what's doing right for Poland. If they were, they would not be spending or allowing taxpayer money to be spent 19,000 zloty to the friends of ministers to proofread speeches. They'd be working on trying to get this Metro Line 2 open, which they've been working on for how many years, and doesn't seem like it will ever be open at this rate. That's what they'd be working toward, instead of payoffs to friends, living the good life, dining at Amber Room on taxpayer expense, printing money to, like Belka was willing to do, to finance a re-election bid, nationalizing pensions for the same reason, to borrow more money. It's obscene. These guys exist. They've proven it through their actions. And by the way, I always say, watch people's actions, not their words. When Tusk was pushing PO in 2010 and Komorowski, he said, we're going to lower taxes. On Sunday, he said, we're going to lower taxes. They get elected. On Monday, they raise the VAT. So, I mean, watch their actions, not their rhetoric, not their words. And these guys have proven that they're liars, and they're concerned with one thing: their own power and their own plunder. They need to be shown the door. Though I'm not a peace guy, I am anybody but a PO guy at this moment.
Can you feel the vibe? He's talking from his heart.
I'm just saying what I feel. It may not make me any friends, but you know what? I have got Nick Sadowski.
Oh, there you go. Well, one of your new friends or foes is famous in Poland, lawyer, Roman Gierdych.
Lawyer or liar? Wait, what's the word?
Well,
lawyer? Liar? I always confuse the two.
Anyway, he threatens to sue you because on your private Facebook, you commented on Sikorski's spending for translation, and you said it's
proofreading, not even translation. Proofreading.
Yeah, proofreading. Oh.
Apparently,
he shouldn't need that, right?
Well, you know, he's so proud of his Oxford, you know, pedigree, and his wife is also an esteemed English-speaking journalist. He also has, from what I read, he's the daughter of Rostovsky, works for the ministry, also doing proofreading and translation. So
let's talk about the freedom of speech. Let's leave the
okay.
He maybe needed help.
Yeah, okay.
He maybe needed help.
Yeah, everyone needs help. There's nothing
Oxford
wrong
is
with
overrated.
I agree. It's like Harvard.
But let's talk about the freedom of speech and how can you be sued by posting on your private Facebook
in New York.
In New York.
In English.
In English. Comment.
Non-commercial page. Yeah.
How is it possible?
I don't know.
Does he have any case?
I don't know. I certainly am interested to see how this plays out. I encourage him, if he does think he has a case, to take it to court. I would love to have this conversation in the Polish courts about what constitutes free speech, because I think one of Poland's weaknesses is its speech laws. The ability to accuse anybody of slander or libel when nothing violent has occurred. You know, there's a line of what hate speech is. Having opinions on what constitutes bad action or good action or bad person should not be should have the same standard as the U.S. And that's one of the reasons the U.S. has had a more vibrant free society and a freer media and a freer political sphere, is because you have this ability to criticize. The ability to utilize the courts, especially when you're a lawyer who's been in government, who knows the judges, and a lot of these systems are legacy systems that are 50 years old.
Are you implicating that the system is corrupt?
I think the system is broken. I think the system is not healthy. I think the system needs to be reformed. I think there's a lot of room for reform in Poland. I think that Gowin, one of his goals was to reform the judiciary, and he saw, as justice minister, that that was important. And unfortunately, the institutional headwind against him was so strong he couldn't do it. And that's one of the reasons he left to form Polska Razem, and that's one of the reasons I joined him. With Gertik and guys like Michnik as well, everyone knows the Zimkiewicz case. You know, writing a column about somebody who goes around suing everybody for criticizing him, and then you get sued over that column, I think is a very poetic irony. You know, when you've got guys who have the money and the connections and the government capacity, the capacity to do this close work with the government, trying to stifle criticism through the courts, that is not a free society. That is a crony society that needs to be fought. Gertik seems that he's got a history of this kind of activity. I welcome this debate. I think that, you know, I could introduce people to this idea that free speech and free expression are the most important hallmarks of a free society. This is certainly what my father spoke about. It's funny that in 1954, and I quoted on my Facebook the other day, his January 13th entry from the diary where he talks about the censorship. Nobody sees censorship, or there is no censorship because there's no evidence of censorship. Obviously, you know, that's a tongue-in-cheek statement, but that's kind of where 61 years later we're at in Poland today. When you've got
wonder if Mr. Gierdik will use this video in a court of law.
we are in New Jersey, and speaking in English, which is great. I am protected under the U.S. Constitution. I can say what I like. Your servers are U.S. servers. If people can see it in Poland, more power to them. Like I like to say, because one of the biggest criticisms people have against me is that I come and I talk about Poland and Polish policy, politics, economics, not in Polish. And I do not, unfortunately, I do not yet know the Polish language. Very difficult language, by the way. It is a life goal. Hopefully, it'll be one I will be able to achieve. But this argument that I speak about Polish politics without delivering it in Polish, I think, is absolutely flawed, because I hear a lot of Poles talk about Putin, not in Russian, Erdogan, not in Turkish, Kim Jong-un, not in Korean, Orban, not in Hungarian. So when they speak about Orban in Hungarian, then I'll work even harder to speak about Gertik in Polish.
All right. Let's leave them alone for a while. And
but I just want to say, you know, you did ask Gertik, friend or foe. Right now, Gertik has been one of my best friends. He's one of my greatest friends in Poland right now. If it wasn't for Gertik and his hasty bluster on Twitter, I would not have the platform I do to attack his bad activity. And so thank you, Roman.
A lot of people wouldn't know about you now.
A lot of people, I mean, it's amazing.
But you know, there is a smart publication in Poland which really don't want people to know about you. Gazeta.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
They just don't write about you.
Well, it's funny. I've had, in my life, I have been banned from 2 structures. The Polish consulate in New York.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a Polish consul who didn't like me or my politics. And I've been banned from Agora and Gazeta Wyborcza. After I endorsed Gowin and condemned the pension nationalization, I heard that the editor of Duży Format said, we can't do any more videos with him, we can't talk about him, he's too political. Now, every time I've picked up Gazeta Wyborcza and Duży Format, all I see is politics, 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 subliminally and directly. So I find that disingenuous that I was banned because of my politics. I think
so your name is just...
But you know what, I will give Agora and Gazeta Wyborcza a little bit of credit. They're smart. If you want to stifle somebody's views, you ignore them. You don't do what Gertik did and complain about me on Twitter.
Let's talk about something that maybe will be something new on a political scene.
Yeah.
And, I find it very interesting that the young people are getting together and starting to talk about the future of Poland, economy, politics, and above all the political divisions.
Law.
Round table mixer.
Yeah.
Which was started by you and Michał Lisiecki from Frost.
Yes. Michał Lisiecki reached out to me. He was coming to New York, and we met. And it was one of these immediate connections between two people who saw the world the same way, who agreed that things were, and we're from the same generation, we're both in our 30s, who saw things are going, unfortunately, not in an optimal direction. You know, I hear all the time, the 25 years since 1989, look at how far Poland's come. And yes, it has. And I credit a lot of different things, the culture, the Catholic Church under communism, Jan Pavel, Wilczek's law, Balcerowicz in 1989, 90, and 91. I credit a lot of things. I do not credit PO, who likes to go around patting themselves on the back for making Poland better, because under their watch, I've seen an inflection. I think Poland's getting worse. It's becoming less free, both on a speech level and a market level.
Roundtable mixer. Let's concentrate on this.
Lisiecki approached me, and we just started talking about ideas. And we fell in love with each other's views on Poland and the world, and what we wanted Poland to look like, a freer society. So we devised a working group, a networking group of young people, professionals, people who are motivated by ideas. We get people together, and we discuss a 4-pillar sort of scheme: government, law, economics, and media. And in our view, these 4 pillars need to be optimally reformed to create the freest society. And so we did our first event, and we had all sorts of speakers: Ryszard Petru, myself, Michał on media. I spoke about government. In the future, we're going to talk a lot about economics. The next one, I'm going to talk about free speech and the rule of law and freedom of expression and things like the First Amendment here in this country. This working group attracted over 100 people the first time. Now it's getting a lot of press. I encourage people to go to YouTube and search for RTMX and watch some of the speeches. Cezary Kazimierczak from the Warsaw Entrepreneurs Foundation gave a great speech. We think that we're going to create sort of a snowball effect, because the thing that's lacking in Poland today is engaged civil debate, open, even discordant viewpoints, getting people together to talk about ideas. What you see is 2 things. You see either a poison debate, where you've got the far right yelling at the far left at the top of their lungs and throwing crap at one another, or you have total disengagement. And what the worst thing is total disengagement. And that's what I'm seeing from the younger generation, those who are in their 20s and into their 30s. They thought they had...
plug out.
They plug out. They say, you know what, I just want to, do my business. I just want to create something, whether it's in the art and culture realm, movies, or fashion, or media talking about culture. But the problem is, and this is something that my father said, this is something that Edmund Burke said, and my father and I both subscribe to Edmund Burkean classical liberalism, is that for democracy to be preserved, it needs to be actively fought for. There needs to be a principled opposition, always yelling about freedom and pushing the powers that be, the authorities, to let them be more free, not just rolling over when freedoms start getting taken little by little. And that's what's happening in Poland. Now so many young people are afraid to talk out. When I said what I said about Sikorsky, not expecting Onet to pick it up or anybody to even read it beyond my few friends on Facebook, so many people messaged me and said, "Thank you so much for saying what you said. If I said it, they'd be coming to arrest me." This is not what Poland should look like, that the young people who want to express themselves are scared to do so for fear of reprisal. This is what my father fought against in 1954. This is absolutely shameful. So we're having a history repeats kind of moment 60 years later, and that's why Lisiecki and I are really looking to galvanize a fight.
What I like about Roundtable Mixer is that you have young people. You said the 1972 limit. If you're born
August 1st, 1972, because that was the moment of
too
illustration. You're too
old. I can be an advisor.
Yeah, you can be an advisor. And you know what? Eventually, I mean, I don't know where this thing is going to go. We're not coercers or manipulators. We just want to get people talking about ideas freely. This is what we want. I don't know what's going to happen from this thing, but for instance, Ryszard Petru's over 42. We're going to have, hopefully, Jerzy Stępień, who is former Constitutional Tribunal head, come and speak. You can be older. We want people with ideas and passion and experience and improving themselves, that they're competitors. They're not manipulators. They're not coercers. They do not take the government line.
Good luck with Roundtable Mixer. Next time, I want to be there.
You're one of our media experts.
Good. Matthew, you're Jewish. How is anti-Semitism in Poland?
Lower than anywhere else in Europe.
I hear all the time, being in New York and in the media and talking to some Jewish American people, whom most of them, they have Polish roots, that there is huge anti-Semitism in Poland.
My experience in Poland has been nothing but positive. One of the things that I found very, very interesting when I started going to to Warsaw and around was that people were hungry to understand the history and to reconnect with this sort of rich legacy. Jews contributed a lot to Poland. The capital of European Jewry for hundreds of years was this sort of Krakow-Lviv corridor. And now you have this museum of Polish Jews that has just opened to huge acclaim, further showing this rich history. And Poles, I think, are very connected to it. I find it fascinating. I have a friend, Johnny Daniels, who runs a project called the Matseva Project, where he goes around Poland looking for abused and neglected and scattered Jewish gravestones and burials and reinterring them in Jewish cemeteries. And he has found nothing but help from every small town council. They want to be involved, they want to help, they want to make history right. And I find this very, very, very positive. And I have this argument here as well in New York City.
How can we, as a Polish American, or how Poland can start fixing this?
You are. The record is continually being corrected. For instance, this battle over lexicography and semantics a few years ago with the New York Times finally ceasing to call them Polish death camps and calling them German death camps in Poland, because you know what? A lot of Poles died in these death camps. A lot of Polish lives, families were ruined. It's totally disingenuous. I love this idea of a monument to Polish heroes who fought to protect Jewry. And this was not a small number. This was a good material part of the population. Of course there were atrocities. Of course there was Jedwabne. But there was much more of that going on today in modern-day France. Poland is doing a really, really great job of setting history right and creating great relationships for the 21st century and beyond between Poles and Jews. I think it's very, very powerful and very, very positive. I'm a huge proponent of it. People ask me frequently, you know, do you feel more Jewish or do you feel more Polish? I have to be honest. I was not brought up very, very deeply in the Jewish tradition or faith. I feel much more connected to being a Pole, to being a Polish citizen. I've been to Poland 30 times. I go back all the time. I've got Polish citizenship. I have yet to be to Israel. I'd like to go to Israel academically, but I don't feel that same connection to the sort of the Jewish culture as I do to the Polish culture.
And your father converted, right?
My father converted, actually, to Catholicism. Some say this was, you know, expedient so that he could write for the Catholic press, but he grew up in a secular household of merchants in a city of Warsaw that was very Catholic. His idols intellectually were St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas. His relations with Jan Pavel were strong, and he believed that this was a saintly man who did a lot for Poland, who he never failed to speak positively of when he was in the U.S. in the 70s and 80s. He was very connected to Polish Catholicism, and I've inherited that both academically and I guess through heritage, that I say frequently, why was Poland so much better than the other oppressed Iron Curtain states? Why did it come out of communism so much more successfully? And my answer to that is not, you know, the governing class. My answer to that is the strong connection to the Catholic Church. And that strong connection to the Catholic Church stems from the fact that Poland was oppressed and imperialized by Russians, Soviets, Germans, Prussians, Austro-Hungarians for so many hundreds of years, and the center, the moral and cultural center of the society was the church, and the commies could not rip that out of Poland's hearts and minds, and that really set Poland up better. These values were stronger.
Even if someone is not religious, they cannot deny that Poland and Christianity and the
education system. It instills this sort of church-centric morality. Now, I'm a huge believer in secularism, and this is why I have some issues with political parties that go too close to the church. The church should not be setting secular law, but it should have a huge impact on moral law. And so, but you have to keep those apart for thriving plural society.
We have to do it more frequently. We're running out of time. We have to start a program, an hour with Matthew Tyrmand. All right, and do it.
I'll run out of things to say, but you know what? You know what? Roman Giertek is helping give me commentary to talk about. So again, Roman, thank you for being my friend.
I'm pretty sure they're gonna watch this video too. They want to find out more about this strange Matthew Tyrmand. Who's this guy?
I want to go back to one thing though on this, you know, this segmentation of Jews in Poland, the viewpoints in the world. I think one of the great detractors in Jewish relations in Poland is what I call the grievance-mongering class. We have this here with Al Sharpton. You can't get past racial wounds when you've got Al Sharpton going around trying to stir it up for his own profit. I look at Michnik and Wyborcza and this whole class of media elites who think that they are holier than thou, who constantly try and stir it up between the Jewish and Polish connections, and also with the gay and homosexual lobby and their movement, and they try and make it worse. You know what? Being gay in Poland is probably not as easy as being gay in New York and San Francisco, but it is certainly not Saudi Arabia. It is getting better, and it is getting more and more libertarian. The people are getting more and more libertarian. I don't know very many young people in Poland who really feel that passionately about ruining the lives of homosexuals.
This guy just can't stop talking.
I'm sorry.
I love your conversation, but we have to finish.
Okay.
And just to end on a different note, any sports in your life?
Well, 2 days ago, I started horseback riding.
Okay.
These wild horses, you got to break them in. It's a tough.
You picked one already?
I've picked my horse, and I am going to break that horse in over the next few months, hopefully. So.
Good luck. Matthew, pleasure having you.
Bardzo mi miło.
Bardzo mi miło. And good luck. We'll follow you. We'll see what's going to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and see you next time.